Howdy folks, welcome back to FinOps for Finance. And today I'm going to talk about the FinOps Certified FOCUS Analyst. Apologies, it's been a delay in me getting any new material out. I'm blaming Christmas, snow, the new year, and I could have been arsed. Over that period of time, it's just taken a little bit of while to get cracking again in January. But here we are, ready to roll. What I'm going to talk about today in terms of the FinOps Certified FOCUS Analyst is what's involved in the certification. So walk you through the material at a high level. I'm going to talk about the exam and more importantly how to pass it. And then I'll give my opinion on if it's worth the investment. It's $400 and is that worth your time and your money? So that's what I'm going to cover today. So first off, walking through the material, what's involved, the different sections. You've got the introduction / the focus and FinOps piece. So this is pretty much a cut and paste from the introduction to FinOps Focus course, which is a free course. So it talks about the basics of the focus specification, why it matters, why you might want to know more about it. So you've kind of covered this material already if you've done the natural stair progression of intro to FinOps, the FinOps certified practitioner, and then the intro to focus. So that's kind of covered in those two pieces. In terms of reading the specification, it's broken down into, it gives an overview of what's to come further as you dive deeper into it. It talks about columns, so the different column types, and defines that data in terms of the ID, the name, the description, and the constraints and the versions. There's also the attributes piece, which talks about a high level requirements for the data and the granularity that it goes into. So this is, from a data point of view, it's really like technical. So if you're used to working with data, a lot of this language you'd be kind of familiar with. If you're new to it, it's heavy enough going. So just be prepared for that. Maybe tackle it on a couple of chunks. Do like 45 minutes here, 45 minutes there, and just try and understand it. It also talks about different types of data types, so normative text or non-normative text. So these are the way that the data shows up within those columns and attributes. Within the attributes, my notes are stuck. It goes through the high-level requirements for the granularity and applying the formatting. So defines what those columns looks like. So for example, your currency format, it's in dollars and it's got 2 decimal places or whatever that might be. Your date format, YYY, month, day, and then the kind of the hours and minutes. So all that is kind of specified, which when you think about it, because you're getting so much data from so many different sources, having these guardrails in place is quite important so that you can compare apples with apples. And that's what focus kind of boils down to. Those reading the specification piece kind of sets the tone for that. Then you get into the kind of the bit of a more detailed piece where it goes into the weeds around the attributes and the columns. What I would advise here is maybe that the information naturally focuses on the attributes first and then talks about the columns afterwards. I'd maybe flip the material and read the column section first. And the reason for this is, number one, the column section is more interesting and compared to the attributes piece, because the columns is what the actual data is. So it talks about the charge types, the SKU types, the pricing, the cost, the usage. So these are concepts that you can, if you're kind of on your FinOps journey, you're familiar with these pieces and they're not as data rule heavy as the attributes are. So that would be, I did the data attributes piece first and my head was just melted trying to take all this in. And then I did the columns piece and I was like, oh, that's quite interesting how they look at cost, the different cost metrics that are available, whether it's billed, contracted, effective, all these different cost types. And it explains them in really good detail. But the attributes piece, it's a slog. But by doing the attributes after, it's almost like dessert at the end of dinner. or the opposite. So you're having your dessert first by doing the columns piece and understanding it. And then the attributes is the hard slog of, oh God, I have to understand what the data, underlying data actually looks like. Then it kind of moves on to the focus conformed data sets. And this takes you to talks about the relevant cloud service providers, how they provide the information. So the portals for accessing that. And there's also some other providers, SaaS providers and such, that can also provide some focus conformed data sets. So it kind of walks you through how to kind of get your hands on those for your specific case. Then there is the use case pieces, and I find this probably the best part of the training because you can filter on the persona types and the capabilities to see how focus would work for it. So for example, if you're doing chargeback for a multi-cloud environment, ideally you'd want your GC, Azure, and AWS spend coming through in a consistent format so you can divvy that out to the different business units. So it kind of walks through what that might look like. It also talks about it shows the relevant SQL code involved in the base query, which is quite helpful. And there's also some examples of, so like if you don't necessarily know what to filter on and resolve, there is some examples in there to get you started, some common use cases. So kind of out of the box, getting started with focus piece, which is quite useful. And then last piece talks about kind of best practices. So a lot of this is, what do they call it? Data agnostic. These rules apply to if you're working with data anywhere, not specifically in focus. So it talks about like validating your results using distinct count as opposed to count, so you're not duplicating or giving false readings, filtering, exclusions, those kind of things to try and drill into the information a bit more and get something a little bit more actionable. So they're kind of basic enough rules. What it does add, which I found useful, is it gives you kind of the SQL code for these base queries. So if you don't have a really solid SQL background, it provides that framework, I suppose, that you can leverage. And I don't know SQL to a serious degree. I've got a very basic understanding. So I found it beneficial when I was looking at that piece. So to summarize, a lot of information there. It's hard going. It's quite a bit more difficult to process compared to the FinOps practitioner piece because it does get really into the weeds with kind of data rules and stuff like that. The exam itself. So you've done the material, you've kind of gone through the hard slog, and you're ready for the exam. What does it entail? There are 40 questions with 75% passing grade, and you get 3 attempts over 12 months, and it's about 1 hour limit to complete. What I would advise here is, as you go through the material, to take note of the examples where it shows the attributes or the columns in action. And what I mean by that is there might be an example where they give a scenario. So you've got a bill from X date to Y date. Is the end date included in the figures based on the specification? Would be an example of something that you'll see through in the training. I just kind of create almost a library of those examples for 2 reasons. One, it's a likely question in the exam, and 2, it's kind of useful for yourself to refer back onto in the future when you do crack this open, because chances are you might do the training and not necessarily apply the focus specifications for a while. So having kind of almost a cheat sheet to hand, it's quite useful as well. The exam itself is open book, so you can have the material open while you're doing the exam. So there is that as well. Probably don't, like if you're just click through the exam and then click through the material and just open the exam, you won't have enough time to figure it all out. So you do have to kind of work through the material to answer the majority of the cases. But if there's ones where you're just looking to validate, like I think I'm right, there is time allowed to kind of do that. And like say, you've got 3 attempts over 12 months as well. So even after covering the material, have a crack off it. And if you don't get there, you'll know the areas that you're maybe a bit shy on, and you can work on those. So then, to recap, what are my thoughts? So focus is the way of the future really in FinOps, because especially with the shift left agenda, where you're looking at engineers to take action to drive efficiencies, but then you're also edging towards private cloud information coming into the focus specification as well. So all this data needs to have a common, kind of like Lord of the Rings, one ring to rule them all. So focus is kind of it. So having an understanding of it and starting to apply it would be a really worthwhile skill to have. It gives you a better understanding of the usage to help the engineers make better decisions. And also there's more consistent terminology and data structure. So if you're just standing up your reporting function and pipelines now, focus isn't a bad place to start, as opposed to you making these independent decisions with a finger in the air when there's already a framework there that you might as well copy. So it's a trodden path that you can go on. From an individual career progression development perspective, the answer is it depends, which is the ultimate data consultant analyst answer. If you're earlier on in your career and you're just getting started in FinOps, or you're looking to break into FinOps, I think this is probably not that necessary. Because if you've done the introduction to FinOps, the practitioner, and the intro to focus course, you've kind of got a good understanding of what the discipline is, and you've an understanding of the focus framework. You're probably not going to be building data pipelines just yet. So from that point of view, if you're starting off, I would maybe leave this one aside. Where it would possibly be more relevant is if you're further on in your career and you're maybe looking to get FinOps Professional certified, because this certification is a requirement for that. So what's worth doing is maybe break it down in parts. So as opposed to signing up for the Pro Cert and then you have to do the Focus one and the Pro together, maybe just doing the Focus one and then doing the Professional after. It kind of breaks up the learning to a degree, and it allows you to kind of process what's gone on. I know that's my plan anyways. Fingers crossed I get funding to do the Professional Cert soon, and I'll be able to tell y'all what it is like and give my 2 cents on that. But that's where I see this cert sitting. So if you're starting off, maybe hold off for now, and if you're further on and looking to maybe move on to do the FinOps Professional certification, it's worth giving it a crack. I'll chat to you all soon. Any questions, comments, feedback, just leave something in the comments below, and I'll chat to you all soon. Take care. Bye bye.